Are you ready?
Okay. What is today? August 14th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And we're with Dave Spalding. Tell me your full name and when and where you were born.
It's David Gene Spalding, anyway. I was born in Aberdeen, Washington in 1953, October 1st, anyway, at 7:22 a.m.
Okay. So, do you know why you were given that name?
I don't know. That's a good question because a lot of my ancestors always named somebody after somebody before them, you know. But I couldn't tell you. One thing that's kind of unique, my middle name is Jean. My sister's name was Jean. Her middle name is spelled different. Mine was Gene, and she had an A in hers, Gean.
No, J.
Yeah, J. Mm-hmm. And then one of my cousins, anyway, named Gene, anyway. So
that one's passed down.
yeah, I kind of passed around, yeah.
So, tell me about your parents and grandparents.
Well, my parents, my dad was one of four, anyway. He was the youngest child.
And what was his name?
Paul.
Okay.
Paul Spalding. Paul Francis Spalding, anyway. And he worked on the farm here, and then he got a job at West Coast Plywood down in Aberdeen, and he worked there for quite a few years. And him and Frank Carson, they used to ride together to go to work down there. And then my dad, they started, West Coast started slowing down. They seen it was going to close up, and some people went to Evans Plywood. And my dad, he got onto the school district up here, and then he started working down with the school district.
Oh, and your mother? Her
And
name?
well, my dad, before he worked at the school district, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
He took and worked at Elma Plywood for a short time, and then he got worked at Simpson, and then they had a cut back out there, and he got laid off, and he got on the school district. So I better correct that history. So
Well, what was he like?
my dad,
Yeah.
oh, he was real easygoing guy. He talked quite a bit, you know, and he told quite a bit of history. And we had one high school kid come down, but the bad timing on that was my dad had cancer, and when he come down and talked to him, he didn't really feel like talking much, and also he didn't get much history out of him. So it was kind of a bummer. But
So, it sounds like your dad was a hard worker.
oh yeah, he always kept, you know, busy around the farm here, you know, doing different kind of things. And he was real ingenuity of how to take nothing to make it work, you know. You know, kind of, okay, you can take these bolts and that piece of iron over there, and you can take a bolt together, and we can make something out of it, you know.
So, what did he do at the school district?
He was a janitor up there,
Okay.
maintenance man.
And what about your mom? What's her name?
My mom,
Her name and...
all right, that's Florence Winings, anyway. Yeah, Florence May Winings, get her name right. And she had quite a few brothers and all, anyway. 3 brothers and, was it 3 sisters. One of them passed away, her older sister, anyway, when she was just a little child, got appendicitis, and she died from it. Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
And what was your mom like?
My mom was pretty easygoing. Disciplined when you got out of hand. She'd always take a fly swatter and she'd whip you with that, you know. A large insect, I guess. But anyway.
That's a first.
When you're bugging her, yeah.
Yeah, I'm bugging her, yeah. But she was more of the discipline than my dad was. My dad was pretty easygoing.
So did she work outside the home when you
Yes,
were
she
growing
did.
up?
What she did, well, do a little history here. My grandfather, he used George anyway. They used to sell hay and whatever, you know, on the farm here if they had excess. My grandfather, Robert anyway, Winings, he heard they had hay down here, so he come down, he bought some hay, and he needed some more hay. So he'd send his one daughter down to pick up hay. Well, she didn't pay for it. Said, well, Dad will be by to pay you later. So he finally cut him off, you know, my grandfather. Spalding did.
Oh my gosh, so they were stealing.
And so anyway, he come down and wondered, why did you cut me off? You know, and he said, well, you never paid me for it. And he said, well, I sent the money every time. and so, so anyway, my dad's dad, anyway, my grandfather, he said, well, my grandmother, she was ill and she had Parkinson's disease real bad and she's bedridden. And he said, I could use a housekeeper and all, you know, if she wants to come work it off, you know, I'd be fine. I'd pay her, you know, to take and do it. So that's when my mom came down and she worked as the housekeeper and paid her, my grandfather's debt off anyway, which her sister run up.
Wow.
So.
What was your grandmother's name?
My grandmother's name? Mm-hmm. That was Mary.
Mary.
Right, yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
And my, give you a little history on that. When my grandfather came down here from up on Spalding Road up there, which is a homestead, three brothers of his also came down here and they bought the farm. And they took and was all together. My grandfather met Mary anyway, and married her. Well, her sisters, three sisters kept coming around to visit Dale. So my grandfather's three brothers fell in love with the three sisters,
oh my goodness,
and they all got married.
I love it.
Uh-huh.
Awesome.
And only one of them got a divorce anyway, of all three of them. The rest of them, they was there until they passed away. And I just found out last night that I guess my grandfather had my grandmother knocked up with my aunt before they got married. But that was kind of a shock to me. I talked to a cousin of mine on a little history.
I think that happened all the time.
Uh-huh.
All the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, times have not changed.
Uh-huh. So,
Do you have pictures of your grandma and your grandpa and your mom and your dad?
yes, I sure do.
Yeah. I need time to show
Uh-huh.
us.
Yeah, he was showing me pictures earlier.
I will show you a picture of the whole family, all of them together here. Find it.
On the next page.
That's all the cousins right there.
Oh, neat. So they play
Yeah,
guitar?
my dad played guitar, and my Uncle Fred, he played guitar. He lived right over here, Uncle Fred did. We all end up with a piece of the farm anyway.
Oh, that's neat. You should label who's who on there. Are they in the order?
Yeah.
Yes,
they are.
uh-huh.
I think
They
so.
are in
Yeah,
order.
they're perfect. That's good.
This is my aunt and uncle Carl. He's the
Okay,
one who
okay.
started the airport, which I showed you right here.
Oh,
They flew the
cool.
first airmail out of Elma.
Airmail out of Elma, your uncle.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's
The
good.
airport,
Who?
that's Carl.
Carl.
And Carl, he went up to Mount Vernon. I read one story one time, and him and some friends anyway, and they bought a plane up there, and they brought it down. He always had the desire to fly, you know. And they started a little airport over here on his field, which goes down to everybody's. Everybody's is actually building part of the airport field. And then a bunch of other people brought their planes in, and some people set up deals, and that was the airplane hangar there that they kept the planes in. Well, they took and had one guy that they'd give, one guy was given flying lessons and all. Well, this guy bought this plane, and, oh, I ain't got to pay for flying lessons, I'll teach myself. Well, he flew into one of the sheds out there and found out it was cheaper to pay for the flying lessons than to buy a new prop for his plane and all. And the prop on the plane
That's cool.
is hanging on our barn out here.
Oh, really?
Hey, stop making so much noise over there.
It's picking up.
We're taping this. Can you do that later?
I'm almost done.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want old pictures? Here you go.
Oh, awesome.
Wow.
Cool.
I do have a picture of Skipper's
And
grandfather
here's
in here.
Oh, yeah. Here.
the airport. It's got a little bit of glare on it from the.
The guy in the front of the horse right
Lines.
there is Skipper's grandfather.
Oh, what was his name?
That's Roger.
Roger.
Uh-huh. He was one of the younger boys. Yeah,
Nice
okay,
look-
yeah.
That's a nice looking horse.
There is my grandfather and great-grandfather. He's the one who homesteaded up this sats up there on Spalding Road.
Cool. And what were their names again? George.
George and George.
George and George.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Where are they holding? Just a picture?
Yeah,
Oh,
on the
this
picture.
is your
I love the
picture.
beards.
Uh-huh.
What
And I
do you
found
re-
out that he came from Germany. And I got the name in the book here. And which I better pull out because I'll get it wrong. Because I laid this history out last night.
Just had the names and birth dates and stuff on the
Oh,
back.
you got that? Okay. You guys are good at doing
Documenting.
documenting. Yeah.
Gunnar Stockton.
No, that's his cousin's writing.
Gunnar
She
Stockton.
did
All
that.
right,
Roxy?
that's how you say
Yes.
the name.
Cutter's the stock.
I don't know if there's anything in there.
Oh,
And there was another boy, Frederick, that was older, and he took and got killed up there on the Spalding Ranch up there. A tree fell on him and that killed him.
what was his name?
Frederick. He
Was
was the first one there underneath my grandfather.
So tell me what you remember about going to visit your grandma and grandpa down there on Spalding Road.
I didn't really ever get to go visit them because
Oh,
my
you didn't?
grandfather lived next door here, and my great grandfather was gone before I was born.
Oh, okay.
But I did go up and, with the family over the years and seen Roger and Margaret. Anyway, that's my dad's uncles and aunt, which is Marie's and them's parents anyway. And one thing I heard about I'm getting off on the family history up there a little bit now. When my grandmother and grandfather came out here, he met her back in Illinois because he came from Germany. He ended up in Illinois and then he came out here. And it surprised me. I did the math here anyway when she was born and when he was born and all like that. He was in his 20s and she was only like 16 years old. And they got married and they came out here and then they had the child, when she was 16. And was kind of blew my mind a little bit. But anyway, when they homesteaded up the Satsop, and it varied on how much land you could homestead at the time, the partial, however big it was. I Googled it this morning, and the maximum you could homestead was 160 acres. So anyway, they took and homesteaded two pieces up there. My grandmother homesteaded a piece, and my grandfather homesteaded a piece. Great-grandfather and great-grandfather. And they built a house right on the line for the two pieces because that was part of the rules. You had to develop the property and you had to live on it.
Right.
You couldn't just claim it. And my grandmother, whenever she got ticked at grandpa, or great-grandpa, or vice versa, they say, I think it's time for you to go home. In other words, you can go to your end of your house. So that was the story I always heard, I got stood up.
Funny.
Mhm.
Funny.
And then up there, what you brought up earlier, my grandfather, he had a squabble with one of the neighbors. And the neighbor was over a cow breaking into the field or something like that. And he was arguing there. And it was an older gentleman anyway. And he had a cane or whatever. He raised it up to hit my grandfather. And his son picked a rock up and pegged him in the head with it and killed him.
I found the newspaper article on it. It was August Moss.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And he took and my grandfather didn't want his son to anyway get in trouble, so he took the blame for it. My great-grandfather did.
Which son was it? Do you know? Did you say it was Ed earlier?
Yes, it was Ed.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
That's how I was understood.
Yeah. Interesting.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
they went to trial and all, and they got a lawyer anyway, and the lawyer, he
Yeah.
he got him off.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That was late 1800s even.
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah. We found the newspaper article. Have you ever seen the newspaper article?
No,
I'll
I
have to
didn't.
find it
I'd
for you.
love to see
I'll
that
find it-
article.
I'll find it
I'd
for
like
you.
to have a copy of that.
Yeah,
whatever.
I'll give
Uh-huh.
you one.
And anyway, that kind of might be part of the deal here because I've run across some papers from the archives here anyway. And you might want to look at this. This is the deed for the property. It was Chehalis County. And what year did they change Chehalis County to Grace Harbor?
Oh, geez.
It was in the 1900s.
Yeah, I can't. I don't.
Because in
know until they say.
1925, I think, is when they paid for this place down here. That's the deed for the property here.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date of that. Cool.
And I can't look it up because it's on my phone that's recording.
for the consideration and sum of $1 and other considerations.
That was standard language,
Right.
so that people wouldn't know exactly how much
And you
it was
see,
sold for.
you get down under, you can see the price they paid for it.
So, and here's a photo of Florence is the girl standing in the back, Dave's mom.
That's a neat picture.
Mm-hmm. And that's my grandfather and grandmother anyway on the Winings family.
And that whining. So can I get that one?
Yeah.
Nice.
In the back has their names listed on it.
That's awesome. Cool.
This is a family picture of at my grandmother's, which was this one right here.
Here's your Uncle John.
There's a glare. So.
Was her,
Oh, yeah.
her-
That's fine.
the picture of her family at her funeral,
Oh.
right after the funeral.
Oh.
And grandma passed away, grandfather passed away, and every kid down the line in that picture passed away until the end here. Now,
In that order?
mm-hmm,
Really?
mm-hmm.
Interesting.
The only ones that got out of order was my Uncle Bob, which is the oldest boy. He took and passed away before my mother.
Oh, wow.
And that was me being held there. So I said, well, I should have went about the same time or maybe a little before my mom. But yeah, anyway, Uncle Bob and me jumped out of line there anyway.
And that's the barn that was here on the property?
Nope, that
Where's
is the barn is still standing. You know where the four corners of the South Union out there is at? Right behind the rest area where they're building all those new houses.
Oh, yeah.
That's the barn that's standing there.
Oh.
And give you a little history on that barn. My grandfather Spalding, and them, they had a sawmill here. And they sawed the lumber that built that barn.
Oh, neat.
And anyway, they took and here's another paper I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know. It looked like they sold some timber up there or whatever, you know. Does that make sense to you?
Let's see.
As being a real estate person.
George Spalding and Lizzie Spalding. That's been the wife of Grove. Like that. That's the name of our cemetery.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Grove Cemetery. Oh, did Grant and Bargain convey George Quimby? Where did the Quimbys live? Did you know?
There was some Quimbies uptown here, and there was also a Quimby that shot John Turnell.
Yeah, Giles Quimby.
Or, you know, he was, no, if he shot him or
He got credit.
whatever.
He got credit for
He
shooting
got
it.
credit for it, yes.
Hmm.
And then I also heard history of John Turnell. When they brought him out, they hooked him behind a horse and drug him up down the streets of Montesano, and everybody took target practice at him.
Oh, gee.
Well, I didn't hear the hard target practice, but they took him into the mortuary and they had to open the doors because there was like 750 people that wanted to see him. They wanted to see the wild man was dead. And they took the pictures, the postcards, and sent them all over to their people. But they were taking like hair and stuff from his, body.
Oh, you're kidding
And
me.
when they buried him, I found the newspaper articles that were said that they were afraid of grave robbers coming to dig him up and steal stuff from him. So they had people watching the grave. And then Rex Valentine, who you know him, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
He was a well witcher, and he said he could tell where bodies were. He said that there's no body in front of the headstone, but it's behind the headstone.
Oh, I'll be darned.
So some people say he's not even buried there. Some people say he's buried on the edge of the property because they were afraid of the grave robbers. But Rex says there's a body, so I'd love to have someone else. I just talked to someone recently who said they can find bodies.
Maybe we know where Bucky's buried at now.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other story too. Was he related to you guys, or
Yes,
he how?
All right, okay. My grandfather's great-grandfather up there, George Sr., some of his relatives, brothers and sisters came from Germany later on after they got established up there. On up the road, Fritz took and lived. Then it was up on, of course, Quicker Smith, I understand. And anyway, my grandfather's great-grandfather's sister married one of the Schaefer boys, Marie.
Oh,
She was.
yes. I remember Rose saying that all the time.
Uh-huh.
Really touching.
And so anyway, and it was all kind of close up there because there's all German. And I guess the kids could speak German better than they could speak English. And that deal was kind of like a German colony up there, I guess. And I just found out the other night how my ancestors survived anyway. You know, they logged, they took and raised cows and whatever, and, you know, farmed. And when Schaefer's was doing it, they took and raised all the pork they could raise and stuff like that, pigs and stuff like that, and they sold them to the Schaefer's for their logging camps.
Oh, really?
And then they bought the property down here, and I got some pictures here. They had a bunch of milk trucks anyway, and they took and hauled milk to the dairies from the different farms anyway, the creameries, or I should say, not dairies.
So your grandpa did this?
Yes, my grandfather and his brothers
Where's the milkman?
were the milkmen.
That's awesome. Do you have any milk cans that say like Spalding Farm?
No, it's
It was just.
but
Like
they
different-
went and hauled it in for
different-
other people for
different
some
farms.
fee, and that was a fleet of his trucks he had.
Oh, that's so cool!
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I found the photo of your mom and dad's wedding.
Yes, uh-huh.
That's pretty. I was going to put it on my camera.
Oh.
Paul and Florence.
Now that's
with a
I got
cool
an
old
interesting
car.
I got an interesting story to go about that too.
Really?
You
My
do it too. Yes, can you? That's so cool.
grandmother, when she was sick, and my aunt seen in a magazine right after the war there anyway about a German girl that was looking for a place for them to sponsor her in the United States here. You know, they had families over there. So she talked my grandfather into sponsoring this German girl to come over to the United States. And you had to send so much money back to Ellis Island to have it in reserve there for him. And it wasn't very much. It was like $25 or something like that at the time. But you got to remember, those days, you only made like $1 a day, you know, working.
Right.
So anyway, he took and let her talk him into it. My uncle said the only reason he did that because my aunt was lazy and she didn't want to do the housework. She wanted somebody else to do it. So anyway, he took and sponsored this girl. When she was leaving Germany anyway, they had kind of a going away party for her. And this East German girl took and got to know her a little bit. Where she said, "Can you please ask that family if they had sponsored me too?" So they took and came over here. The gal, she worked out great. She worked off her, what do you call it, denture or whatever.
Indentured?
Huh? And she worked it off. She took a move back to Illinois, back there someplace. And I think she met somebody or whatever, moved back there. And so my grandfather said, "Yeah, tell your friend I'll take and sponsor or whatever, you know." Well, she couldn't get out of Germany unless a mayor, or what do you call them at that time, would take and sponsor you as a part of the community. And he took and said a lot of them wouldn't do it because East German, you know, they didn't want nothing to do with them or whatever, you know, and it was kind of an ugly time back there. So the gal, she finally got one person in one of the cities to sponsor her so she could come to the United States. And she had a letter from my grandfather, yes, he would take and sponsor her. So she got out of Germany, and she said she was pretty nervous, you know, about, oh God, is there going to be money there waiting for me or whatever? And all she could bring a camera, and well, she brought a little bit of money. She wound up in the camera, you know, so she could have a few dollars, you know, when she got here. And she said she got to Ellis Island. There was the money there. My grandfather had the money for her, along with a letter. It says, "Your friend's long gone. She moved up to Illinois. Here's her address. Why don't you just go ahead and go up with your friend, and when you ever get a chance, you can pay me my money back." And so she took and sent the money back to my grandfather and never did get to meet him. But she had pictures because my dad of my mom and their wedding picture had picture of them getting married and all. And she kind of about the same age as my dad. And so they got to be kind of pen pals and all a little bit until she get out of Germany. So she took and moved from Illinois down to California because she's working at a truck dealership back there. And one of the salesmen that was coming in there, he said, "Yep, I'm going to California." And she said, "Oh, California, they have palm trees down there and all?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, they got palm trees." He bragged it up, So she hitchhiked out with him. And when he got to California, he just kind of kicked her out the door. "There you are, we're in California, So she started working down there, odd end jobs. And she said it was rough in Germany over there until she got out of there. They had to go out and glean the fields. They'd raise potatoes or whatever, some of the farmers, and they'd pick up the little potatoes and all, and that's what they had to eat because there was no food. And she said it was really rough. So she took and was down there, and she was selling real estate. She worked her way up too, and she married this one guy that was a teacher or whatever, professor, and they got to do that pretty good. And she was selling real estate. Well, the Brents anyway, girl, she moved down to California, and she happened to run into this real estate place, looking for a place, and she got talking about where she's from. She said Elma, and she said, "Elma, that name sounds familiar." And she took and got her pictures out, and she had this one of the pictures had one of the old farm here anyway. It was flooding. It had the grandstands in the back. Well, she sent the postmaster in Elma here, says, "Do you know these people? I'd sure like to get in contact with them." And nobody in Elma knew who they were or whatever. Well, Matt Howard, he worked at the post office, and they said, "Matt, do you know who these people are?" And he said, "Yeah, that's Mr. Spalding. You can see their farm there, and there's the grandstands right there and all." So they called me up and told me, "You got a letter up here. This person would like to meet up with you." So I looked at it. I didn't know anything about all this history. So I took and got a hold of my uncle, and that's when he told me, "Oh, yeah, Grandpa, my grandpa, anyway, his dad, sponsored her because my aunt was lazy and all, and did it to two girls, and all." So she came out, and she got to meet me and my two cousins anyway, and we was all good friends right up until when she passed away. And my uncle got to meet her for the first time, and we took her down, and she took one picture. Nope, I guess I don't have it here. But anyway, picture of the farm here, and she sent to me that of the river. She said that's the jewel of the place, our campground down there. I don't know if you've seen that, Janie, or not. I'll have to take you down there and show you. But anyway, she just thought it was so beautiful there and all. That
what was her name? Oh,
Trudy.
What was her last name? She even sent me a cuckoo clock. Anyway, and she went back to Germany, and she did quite a bit of history there, and she had a brother over there and all in Germany yet. And it was up northern part of eastern part of Germany, and it's actually owned by Poland now. The farm is up there, and they found one brick building, and she said that she believed that was this part of the Spalding farm anyway over in Germany.
Oh.
And she said over there they're real territorial, like when one country took over the other one, they destroyed the tombstones and all. They didn't want no inheritance from any other country, claim, going back and having claim or right. So that's my ancestors buried there, and it said they're real territorial on that, on some of this stuff. And so it's hard to take and track down history, but that's what's the best she can. Then during the war, a lot of files and stuff I had got destroyed. So
Interesting.
And then when she passed away, she sent me and my two cousins a little bit of money anyway in her deal. And I thought, well, God, that was shock, just, thanking us for what our ancestors did for her, So
which cousins were those?
That was Roxy and Dixie.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Uh-huh.
So speaking of family,
and every year she would send us a German box of cookies.
Nice.
And from Germany.
From Germany. Wow.
Yeah.
Some of them were good, some of them were not.
They didn't have much sugar in anything, yeah.
No, they probably didn't have a lot.
Yeah.
So, what about your brothers and sisters?
I had one sister anyway, and that was Donna. She was, I was born October 1st, and she was born on October 7th, 2 years later. Second, 2 years later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when she was young, like in her teens, she had a lump in the center of her chest. And one doctor anyway said, "Oh, it's just misplaced breast tissue or whatever, or whatever, nothing to worry about." And
Dr. Lindell.
yeah, Dr. Lindell anyway, he says, "I don't like the looks of that." He sent her to a specialist and found out it was a Hodgkin's disease anyway. She had cancer, first-form cancer. And then they took it out. They took and had chemotherapy. She had to go through and radiation. And so anyway, they took radiation and stuff like that. She was a pretty sick kid for a long time there. And then they always did these follow-ups. And they took and took X-ray and all, and she had a real dark spot on her lung or something like that. They took a sample of it, and then she went downhill from there. She got infection where they took the sample out, and that's what actually ended up
She
killing
had
her.
Hodgkin's disease.
Yeah, Hodgkin's disease.
And it's mainly found in men.
Yeah, and the gal from Germany anyway. My wife found it here. Her last name was Edwards, Trudy Edwards, and she lived down at
California.
yeah, California, Ridge Drive, Los Angeles.
How old was Donna when she passed away?
God, what was she? She was about like 22 or something.
Did she ever have any children?
No,
didn't
she
think
never
so.
did get married or anything.
Oh, wow.
She worked for the state up here for a while, doing. Although they punched those cards, remember they had the old cards for the computers, and for different information anyway. She went to school and she learned how to do that. And she worked there for the state for a little while until she got too sick and she couldn't do anything anymore.
Did you have a nickname growing up?
I'd rather not talk about it.
Okay. One of those kind of nicknames.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad. They called me Spud back in school because Spalding, But no, I never did really like it. Yeah, it wasn't nothing real nasty. Or
No, okay. Well, darn. Well, tell me about your friends when you were younger.
Oh, I had quite a few friends anyway. I had some friends that really kicked back and good people. And then I had some rowdy ones. We'd go out and drink and stuff like that. But it was kind of hellraisers. I didn't get too much hell with them. But anyway, Rod Salzman, he was a real close friend back in school.
I know.
And he had the insurance deal in Elma here. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. He never comes back to any class reunion or anything like that. I did go to his parents' funeral and got last time I seen him. And then Joe House, been always my best friend all the way through life anyway. And we went to school together. And then I had a crush on his sisters anyway. And that didn't work out.
So, what was your first trip you took?
First trip?
Yeah, big trip.
Joe House's brother and me, when we got out of school, we went back to Yellowstone and all, and got to see that and all. That's what me and my wife would like to do. We was going to do it last year, but we didn't get to do that.
Yeah.
But
that's cool.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 73.
Oh, okay.
It took me 13 years to get through school. I flunked first grade. I guess I flunked crayon. I didn't want to be there, so I didn't. They held me back one more year. So I would have graduated with Roxy, but I got held back. So
yeah. So what was your first car?
First car was a 1953 Ford four-door. It had a flathead V8 in it. Uh-huh.
What color was it?
It was blue. And it was an old government car my dad bought, an FBI car, whatever it was.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So what was your favorite subject when you went to school? Did you have
My
one?
favorite subject in school was actually shop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really liked working with my hands, wood shop and welding shop. And I got kind of interesting story on that. That was before computers. I took and was in electronics. Okay, that was open, and oh God, I hated that class. I did not know what, you had to take and figure out what a shunt was and how much amperage it would draw or whatever, and to knock things down and all. Well, I hate to say that, but one kid, it was a TA, he was, hey, you guys, here's what the test is on. Here's the answers. So I wrote some of the answers on my arm, I go, okay, yeah. And anyway, I passed the class. And the teacher, he was just amazed. God, Dave, I didn't know you understand this stuff so good, And And I said, oh, yeah, that was rough. And I got the heck out of there real quick before he figured out I was a blooming idiot. But he took and I wanted to get a welding class. And they said, nope, you can't get in welding class. It's too full. Oh, geez. So I took and the semester change. Well, just magically, I ended up in welding class down there. And they had to fill the roster out, how we are and all. So I was there, and I had another class I really loved was, like I said, shops and stuff like that. And that was my senior year I took, and also had auto body. And we learned how to paint cars and do damage and stuff like that. And so we was doing a deal on accidents and stuff like that. So I got hold of the state patrol and asked them if they had any tapes or whatever on accidents or whatever. And they said, yeah, we got one that's real good. It's Signal 13. And if I remember right, I could be wrong on that name. But anyway, it was about different accidents. Oh, God, these cars were not repairable. They was demolished. I had hands hanging out of the window and stuff like that. So anyway, the state patrolman come down to the school looking for me. And at that time, I had a 1969 Roadrunner, and here's State Patrol looking for me. And, oh, God, Spalding's in trouble, And because I did a little bit of street racing and all that, too, at the times. But anyway, we took and called me up. They called down to the electronics class looking for me because that was where I was supposed to be at. And they said, oh, no, Dave's not here. We don't know where he's at. And one of the kids in the class said, oh, he's down in welding class. So they called down to the welding class, and, oh, yeah, he's here. So they sent me up to the office, and the office says, Mr. Spalding, you're supposed to be in electronics. I said, oh, no, that was last semester. I'm over in welding class. I've been there all the time. Never caused no problems in welding class or whatever, And they said, well, we better get this straightened out. So they took and wrote me down that I was in welding class, not in electronics. So I got away with that one. And I did very good in that one. I got A's and B's out of that class.
Nice.
So
on my own, without cheating.
Without the cheating, yeah.
That
So-
influence, Grandpa.
Don't listen. Plug your ears.
What was your first job?
First job was when I was 16 years old, and I moved up from the 53 Ford and to a 64 Plymouth, and it had the push button dash deal. You push the buttons on it. And anyway, my cousin, my dad's cousin anyway, he had a farm over in Eastern Washington at Royal City. And he offered me to give me a job over there. And so I went over there and worked for the summer, farming, irrigating and stuff like that. I learned a lot about farming over there from them.
I know where that's at. It's on the way to Pullman.
Yeah, it is. And that's where my granddaughter got in an accident
Yeah.
at Othello. It's just, you could see Othello from his place anyway, the lights and all from it, because he was on Royal Slope.
And so what was your favorite job?
My favorite job? Oh, I'd probably say when I worked at the plywood mill. I took and come back. I worked for Mark Everson's mom and dad because Mark got a job at the pulp mill and they needed a milker. So I went out there and I was working there while Mark was there a little bit on the dairy.
And Mark is your cousin.
My cousin, yes. My dad's cousin, so it'd be like a second cousin. So anyway, and it was Ed's sister, Ed Spalding's sister anyway, that I worked in Eastern Western for. So anyway, they offered to give me a job up there, and I was feeding calves and stuff like that. And then Mark, he got a job at the pulp mill, and they needed a milker, so I milked there all the way through high school. And I made $500 a month anyway.
That's good money.
And anyway, and that was 7 days a week, and milking morning and night. And so I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get out there, milk the cows, so I could run back in here and get a shower and go to school. Well, you always smelled like cow or whatever, so a lot of us farm kids, we kind of sat together because we smelled like farm kids. We didn't know the difference. Everybody else said, hey, you smell like silage or whatever. So, and then a silo pit, you would pick up a lot, the old silo bunker, you'd pick up quite a aroma in there. So anyway, I get a shower and I rush to school. Well, I had my 69 Roadrunner at that time that I was able to buy it from working it all the time. And Don George was the first class was U.S. Current events, current events. And he'd hear me going down the street because sometimes it'd be late. Oh, here comes Spalding. He'll be here in a minute. So, and I never even went to my locker. I always threw my books right behind the seat of the car so I could take a run right to his class if I was late. And so I got to his class, and he knew I'd be there so he wouldn't mark me absent because he knew I was working.
Because he heard your car.
Uh-huh.
What's your earliest memory?
Earliest memory. Oh, God.
Hopefully it's a good memory.
Well, I remember back in the... We was kind of poor people back, we always struggled with the whole family did, make then meet what he had. We had an old house back there that they moved up out of the field down here, Uncle John's house. Great Uncle John's moved there, and then my dad, then they kind of added on to it, and that's what they lived in. And then my grandfather's house is over next door, and my Uncle Ed, great Uncle Ed, he lived on the other side over here on his property. And anyway, we had an outhouse. You had to go out the back porch through the laundry room out to the outhouse. And the washing machine had a pipe that went out and it dumped water out in a pool out in this yard. And all that mud stunk. Well, some of us kids, we get in mud fights and throw mud at each other, all stinky mud. And oh, God, they was not too happy because the parents weren't. So,
that's so funny.
And I remember cold winters. Oh, God, everybody kind of huddled around the old wood stove because they didn't have much insulation in those houses. A little bit of paper, and that was about it, on the walls.
What kind of music did you like?
Oh, just mild rock and roll, stuff like that.
The classic rock?
And some of the country western,
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So how did you and Kay meet?
She was a neighbor girl, and she was pretty young when she moved here. And I had a few girlfriends, and she kind of had a liking to me. And she come over, I was working on a car once, and we got shooting the bull, and we ended up kind of hitting it off. And, is that right? And I finally ended up taking her out a little bit, and then we hit it off.
How'd you know that you were in love?
Oh, when I knocked her up.
Okay. Okay, that was a signal of don't say that.
What year did you guys get married?
Oh, we got married in 1975.
March 21st.
My first, yeah.
What was your first date?
First date? Where did we go? To a movie? Yeah, we went to a movie.
What movie did you see?
Oh, I don't
No,
know.
we don't know. We wasn't
You didn't watch the movie?
We wasn't worried about the movie at the time.
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
What's your secret to staying together?
Oh, just being best friends.
Understanding each other, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, we argue a little bit at times, but
Who
yeah.
doesn't?
Yeah. We
Her putting up with your jokes? That kind of
yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's shock modesty. She never knows what I was going to say next, though.
Yeah, there you go.
But of all of her family, anyway, we didn't.
You don't need to say that.
Well, she was pregnant anyway, and nobody thought it would work, because
Yeah.
of her age difference and all. This isn't going to work, And we had to go get it signed off by the court down there, because she was young, and so anyway. We've always, we had our little spouts now and then, but we always got along pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Her grandfather, he married,
4 times.
4 times? Her grandfather was. And her dad, he was married twice. One brother, her oldest brother, he was married twice. Her sisters both were married twice. And her youngest brother was married, 4 times?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he married, met a gal in, where was she at? Iraq or Afghanistan?
One of those
Places anyway. And they hit it off, and he come back and he divorced his wife and ended up marrying her. And I said, you better stick with her because we get along real good. And she's quite a bit younger than him. like 10 years. And I said, this one knows how to shoot. You just better stick with her. And she's a sweetheart. Yeah.
So what were your children like when they were little?
Ornery. Huh?
How many do you have?
We have 3 kids. And they seem like they're always like to bicker with each other and stuff like that. I don't know.
What are their names and ages?
Well, what is Jason now? He's the oldest one.
75 of this one.
He's 49. And my other daughter, Amy, she is
Well, she's 1 year younger.
1 year younger.
It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, 48. And then Heidi, she was quite a bit younger. Yeah.
Will be.
Yeah.
And then you got Heidi?
Yeah, Heidi, she was the baby family. She was, 5 years younger than the rest of them.
So did they all get along when they were young?
At times.
At times. But they're kind of honored each other.
What were the holidays like when you were young?
Oh, it was pretty good. I remember Christmas, we always had something under the tree and stuff like that. I remember one year we used to wrap up, we had dogs or whatever, and I even wrapped up some dog food, and, like a dog bone or something like that. The dog would rip the presents apart so we could see what it was in the present because he was trying to get some of the dog food.
You guys just have family gatherings.
Yeah, we had
Because
family
there's
gatherings.
a picture of all you guys.
And my parents had the first TV, My grandfather, he'd come over and he'd watch Warren Swelt, stuff like that. I remember him a little bit. So I was just like 3 or 4 years old. I sat on knee and watched TV. That would be about it. I don't remember when he passed away. I was born in 53 and 56, I think he passed away. So.
What were the holidays like when your children were young? Did you spoil your kids during the holidays?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My wife does, yeah.
And I like to decorate.
Yeah.
He does not.
And I remember at times, we'd buy milk and stuff like that. We'd dig through our change jar until the next payday, to make sure we had milk and stuff like that. But,
The holidays were good.
Yeah, it was always good.
Usually, we went to my great grandparents,
Yeah.
and then we'd go to your mom's,
uh-huh.
and then we would have dinner here.
Yeah.
Made our rounds.
Her great grandma, Irene, when come from Montana, she lived out in McClary there and always had get-togethers out there. Family did.
So, what were some of your hobbies growing up? What'd you do?
Oh, hobbies.
Sounds like you're working on cars or
Yeah, cars, mostly.
farm equipment.
Yeah. Oh, I had some farm equipment, yeah. And then when my aunt passed away, Olive anyway, which her husband got killed down here in the field, the airplane wreck. He took and was with his best friend anyway, Rick Cook. Rick Cook, he was a bombardier pilot over in Germany over there, and he bombed a lot of it. And when we was talking to oh God, I think her name now, the German gal anyway, said, oh yeah,
Trudy,
yeah. Anyway, said, oh yeah, he'd probably the one dropping the bombs on our cities and homes, And anyway, she talked about a little bit about it be a rough time then. But anyway, he never got a scratch. He lived through the war there, He come home, and my great uncle, Carl, he bought this little airplane, Ronka anyway, and it was a double-seater you sat side by side in it. And they went down there, and they was doing some taxiing around the field, warming it up, whatever. And they're both pretty good-sized guys, Carl and him was. And some people was sitting out here on the road watching him take off. And he took off of the plane, and it stalled out. It nosedived right into the ground, killed both of them. So.
Well, what was your hobbies?
And
That was...
then, then my aunt, she had my dad and his 2 brothers. They'd always help her do the farming and put in hay and stuff like that. And she raised some sheep and stuff like that. Well, when she passed away, my aunt, the one that wasn't too ambitious, my uncle said, she ended up with a house over there because she come down to take care of her, and we kind of think she mistreated her somewhat. But when she passed away, she had in the will that each one of the boys got part of the field down there where my great uncle got killed at, you know. So my dad told me that I could have that one piece there. So anyway, they signed it over to me, and I paid the taxes on it and all, and we farmed that down there. That was one kind of hobby I had, going down there, cleaning the blackberries off of it. And then we got a few dollars, and we took and they started building a nuke site up here. We talked to one guy about pushing the bank down so he could farm it there. And oh yeah, I'm going by my big D8 cat, and I could do that and give you a good deal. And talked to Roger Lambert, and he did a lot cheaper anyway. He come down with his 7, and he pushed the bank all down and made more useful property out of it. And we pushed it right into the slough, the blackberries and stuff like that. And all done, the cat was sitting there, and that big equipment like that, they take and wait until you have another job to bring a lowboy in to move it out, because you don't just haul it back to the shop, you know, okay, and then haul it out from there. So it was sitting there, job was all done. I was working, kind of flattening everything out to plant some seed, and here came apartment coming. I was working the mill out there at the time, coming there looking for me. And he said, Mr. Spalding, you're the one who did that work down there by Wakefield Road anyway? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, we're putting a stop on it. You can't do no more. No more pushing there. I said, well, we don't want to do any more pushing. We're done. And I said, I'm kind of glad you come by. I'd like to know what kind of seed you want put in there. Seed? I said, yeah, for the wildlife, the ducks and stuff. I got to get some crop in there to keep it down for the erosion. Oh, you're going to put some seed in there for the ducks? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, let me check on that. But don't do no more pushing. Okay. So some time went by. I never heard back from him. I called him up and I said, hey, I got to get this cover crop put in. What kind of seed? Well, whatever you think's work good for the ducks, just go ahead and get that done. So I got off of it, you know.
So farming is probably his hobby.
Probably the farming's my hobby.
So how many acres do you still have?
I got,
do you farm?
Well,
what do you do?
That was 24 acres there. Then we had 1.5 acres or 2 acres over here by the freeway that I bought from my aunt when my uncle passed away. And she said, well, you paid quite a price. And they said that was commercial property, the real estate said, man, which was Katzer at the time.
Pat
Katzer's the dad, huh? And anyway, he took, I think it was Pat Senior, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he had this big outrageous price. So anyway, I ended up buying the property there when I was working at the mill. And I took and she said, well, you probably paid too much for that property. And we got a piece belonged next to, joins that down there. I'll just sign that over to you too. So she gave me that piece of property down there by the river anyway, which we have our campsite. The government tracks 4 and 5, I think it was, something like that. So that's where our campground's at and stuff. But
so you still have cows, and what animals do you
oh
have?
yeah, we have cows and hay and stuff like that. And I sell a little bit of hay when I get a chance.
What are your memories with the fair, when the fair was here?
Well, the fair was gone before my ancestors came here. They was pretty well moving out. They ended up moving some of the old fair buildings around. Part of the old buildings out there at the fair was actually moved from down here, moved out there.
Oh.
And from what I got in the history of the deal, the fair was out here, went to Aberdeen or Hoquiam for a short time, then went to Oakville, and they had that government track, what do they call it out here? It was owned by the military. It was a military base at the fair.
Oh, yeah, the CCC.
The CCC, there you go. And they moved on that property there. That's where the fair is at. And then my uncle, he was on the fair board and all, and he took his little cat out there and even helped push around and develop some of that property for him.
Which uncle?
Uncle Delbert.
Albert. Nice.
So
he was really involved in that.
You retired from, where did you retire from?
I retired from the Elma School District. I worked there for 37 years anyway. I worked 9.5 years at the mill out there at White Star, and that was probably, going back to your favorite job I had, that was one of them. I started out working on the dryer, and I hated that job, but worked there for quite a few years on graveyard. And it seemed like you never got your sleep because, you come home, you do a few things, and you go to bed. And I get up and go to work anyway. And no matter what, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you'd hit the cliff anyway. And you just dragging your butt to stay awake. And in about an hour, your chemistry in your body, and you're ready to go again,
Where was that mill exactly?
That's what the Murphy's out there now.
Which is
McMillan Trust.
So where it was. Okay.
Uh-huh. And when I was there, it was kind of interesting. I took and bought a share anyway in the deal. I think we paid, what we paid. It was $10,000 for the share. And it was a working share, nothing down. You got 30 cents an hour more on your wages for owning a share, being a shareholder. And 50 cents an hour went to the person that owned the share to pay it off. So, and you got all the overtime you wanted because you're a shareholder. They'd ask the shareholders before they hired anybody else. So he'd come by and one of the guys asked me, hey, my brother's got a share he wants to sell. And it was a kind of a gimmick because a lot of guys, they'd buy a share and they'd work there for a while and, okay, I don't want this share anymore and they're not going to pay it off. So they quit and they go someplace else. The share would go back to the original owner because it wasn't paid for. And they was selling these shares for half a dozen times, over and over, and whatever the price of the share was going at the time. So anyway, I bought this share and I was working there and they took and had this company come in and they was looking at selling, they all the shareholders decided, well, we better sell the place because timber and all was getting a little harder to get and stuff like that. So, and Mayers was doing a lot of the logging for the company there and also Bell Logging Company logged for them out there a lot. And so they decided to do it. Well, I was working out on the log stacker, and that was one of my more favorite jobs, running with the log trucks, unloading them and loading trucks out and stuff like that. And then when the new company took over, they sold the shares for $25,000 a piece. So I made a $15,000 bonus on it with what I had paid. I think I had about $5,000 paid in on the share at the time. So I got about $20,000. That's why I had money to buy this property next door over here and all. Nice. And then I bought a new tractor with it. Nice. We had a little money left over.
It'd be nice if you could still buy a tractor in property for $20,000.
Yeah.
You can't even get either one.
No, you can't get either one now. But we was making about $3 and some cents an hour out there. And really, it was a pretty good paying job at the time, But, and it was kind of weird. I took and worked on the dryer, sorting lumber, and you'd come out on a table and go around, and you'd have to hurry real quick, sort that lumber out, throw it in different boxes so they can make plywood out of it. And then sometimes on a weekend or whatever, they need somebody on the green chain. I go work on that a little bit. And so here they come by one day and say, hey, got a job down on the chipper. Do you want to take and do that? And I said, well, yeah, what can I do? It's less manual work than the green chain. And they says, well, let's go down and show you. You got to split these logs up, throw them in the big chipper there, and you watch the veneer and make sure it goes in this here. All right. But don't stick your hand in between these two rolls. The last guy did that and it ground his hand off and chewed his arm off. And anyway, he chopped his hand off. Lauren Relke anyway did that. Okay. So I worked there for quite a while doing that. Well, here come a job open on the pond out there, running log stacker and all. And it was an old Wagner 3-wheeled log loader, slower than I'll get out, but it had pretty good lifting power and all. So I put in for that job and run farm equipment and all, and they said, well, God, you really, they told me that I could probably handle the job all right, but they had this young guy that just come out of the military and all, and he took and had a lot of experience with heavy equipment and all. So, okay. So he got the job, Leslie Govey. Well, I was in there working on the chipper anyway, and this was like 2 or 3 weeks after, we did the bid deal on it. And it could have been a month anyway. And they come by and is looking over the mill for Leslie because they had log trucks out there backing up and no Leslie around. And say, Spalding, you put in for that job. Would you go out and fill in until we take and do it? Oh, okay. So Gerald Eddy, he was a log buyer and all. He went out and he said, okay, this is the logs you got to put over here. This is how you run the piece of equipment and all. And so anyway, I did it. And they was looking for Leslie. Finally, they found him. He fell in the pond and drowned. He was underneath the dock. So they took him out, and they come back and he said, well, Spalding, you're doing a great job, but we got one question before we give you the job. Can you swim? I said, oh, yeah, I can swim. Okay, you got the job. So I got that job. Let's see, either you grind your hand off or you have somebody drowned anyway, you get the job. Jeez. So anyway, I worked on the pond, and you get pretty catty. Sometimes you walk across logs and everything else, you get braver. And one time we took and he took and had to put the logs in the pond, and then you pushed him up with a pike pole, and that's where he took the pike pole by slipped or something like that, and he fell in the pond, and that's where he drowned it, didn't know it. And up there where they sawed the wood off, it got sawdust down in the pond sometimes, and it was hemlock and mostly pine, and it's ponderosa pine. I don't know if you, the Promised Land, ever heard of that? That's up towards the hum tulips up there. We got a lot of pine out of that. And what we made at the mill, we made carpet stripping out of that and tobacco barrels ends. And that was the main thing that they made out there at Elma Plywood at the time. And he took and would ship tobacco barrel ends down south anyway, and it was just a big piece of plywood anyway, cut into a circle anyway. They put in the end of the tobacco barrels, and one time they had opened one of the box cars up, and here was a forklift sitting inside. Somebody, wherever the car came from, forgot to take the forklift out, and they shipped it into the company there. I don't know what they ever did with it,
That's funny.
Do you have any other questions?
I can't think of anything else. I'm sure Dave could go on another hour.
He could. I have a quick question. Do you have a funny story from working at this Elma school?
Funny story.
You don't have to name names.
Okay, I won't say name. One businessman once worked there at the school. He took and kid anyway. Somebody would climb up and they poop into the toilet, and it splashed all up over the walls, over the toilet paper and all. And we had to go in and clean that out. Oh God, And this one kid said, "Hey, you know who's doing that?" And he told us a name. So I confronted the kid. I said, "Hey," and he called it the atomic bomb. Well, he ended up being a coach and everything else and has a business now. But anyway, the atomic bomb. And I said, "Your atomic bomb, you can knock that off." And he got kind of red faced. "Oh, that wasn't me, Mr. Spalding."
Did it happen again?
No, it didn't happen again. I think I nailed the right person on that one. And then one kid, a good story was, it made me feel good. This kid took and, at the school there, he took and was kind of an outgoing kid, real hyper. He'd be doing anything. In the Commons, new Commons area anyway, where you go down into the shop areas. I don't know if did you go to school up here?
I went to Matlock and then Montesino.
Okay. Well, anyway.
I know what you're talking about.
There's a handrail across there, and they had the chairs away from there. He jumped up and he ran across that. And I seen him do it, and I chewed his butt out. And I said, "Don't do that, And he's, "Oh, I'm a real catty." And I said, "Yeah, what do you do if you slip and you fall and hit somebody down below and hurt them?" I said, "You don't do things like that." And we got to be pretty good friends, the kid did. And some of the school, he got kind of on their nerves. I don't think they cared if he was there or not, And one day I was walking through unlocking in the morning, and here he come across the Commons there. He just had fire in his eyes. And I looked around and here this kid standing on the other side over there going like this. He was bad-mouthing the other kid's girlfriend anyway, and he was ticked, And they was going to fight. Well, I turned around, and the kid's girlfriend was pulling on him, and I got between the two of them. I put my hands on both their chests. I said, "Don't even think about it, because you're not going to win." And I said, come with me, both of you. Their mouths dropped open. All the kids around are gathering to watch, you know. They said, wow, Mr. Spalding, I didn't think you'd do something like that, you know. And I said, so the kid went in the office, and I said, we didn't have no fight, but they're a little ticked off at each other, and it's up to you guys to solve it, but there was no blows thrown. And anyway, the kid graduated from school, and he even thanked me for that later, you know. He would have been on his last run. He probably wouldn't have been graduated. So that made me feel good.
Yeah.
Have you heard any old stories like about the bank robbery in Elma in 1914?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Back in it used to be the Chronicle building.
Which building was
that? Was right up on 3rd Street, right there, behind, where the visitor center's at.
Okay.
That was where the Chronicle building was at.
Oh.
And it was a bank at one time, and they come in there, and I guess one bullet was shot and was in the wall or whatever I heard, but there was a bank robbery there.
Is that like the parking lot area between the visitor center and the police station?
And some of that, when they tore that building down, a bunch of that building was hauled down here and put on the river bank down here.
Yeah,
I've
seen a picture of that building, and I didn't know what it was. Now I know.
Yeah, it was an old bank one time, they said.
Yeah, I found a newspaper article where it said they caught the gymnasium on fire to distract from the robbery. And it was the Russian mafia. It was 1914. It was 1914. We have it in one place in the museum, but it's a newspaper, so I started making these little stories, you know, little things about all this stuff I keep finding. So yeah,
it's kind of interesting, you know, you've seen a lot of the old pictures. The old viaduct, you know, over, you know, right there, goes up past the the hospital out there. That viaduct there.
The twin viaduct.
That was the original viaduct in Elma over there. And then they have rebuilt it since then. And it go down, and it come down to 2nd Street there, and it turned and went out, and there was a roundabout deal. There's a flagpole there, right by where City Hall is at now, right out the street. And then you went down, you made your turns, and that went down Main Street.
Interesting.
And then the old Imperial Motel used to sit right there where the pellet place used to be, right around the dentist company there, street. That was Imperial Motel there. Bernard's, Imperial Motel, Great Big Motel. And I don't know what happened there, but my Uncle John, he went in there. I think they was delivering some milk or something like that, or did something else. He stopped there at material. And they had a tomcat. And that god dang tomcat pisses on everything all the time. And he says, I can take care of him. And he grabbed the cat, stuck his head in the boot, and castrated the cat right there in the motel for him.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my gosh.
That's one story I heard. It was pretty interesting.
But yes, I remember hearing that one big building on Main Street in 4th, that was Menards.
Yeah, Menards. That's where the dollar store is at now.
Yeah.
And that building is amazing. If you ever get a chance, if you can talk to somebody.
Which one?
Where the dollar store is and where Phil's store is, all that was a big Menards.
There is basements all the way down that street under those stores. Because we had to take real alert of that when on the fire department, you go in there is a basement under this, you know. And anyway, the guy that owned it, Boyd Morrow at the time, he was a fireman too, and he took us down in there. And there is timbers down there and logs. I mean, giant logs underneath there where they hewed the top off. And that's what holds that store up today. Yeah.
Did they use it for like in Prohibition days?
Huh?
Was it like in Prohibition days for the alcohol or?
Well,
what did they use it for?
I heard a story last night behind the old theater over to, it'd be about Sue Jack's where there was a tavern there. And supposedly there was a tunnel down through there. And they take people go into the show house anyway last night. Then they got sneaked down and they go over and they have alcohol or whatever.
Oh,
awesome! I did not realize it was in Elma. Oh my gosh, my phone keeps filling up. How's your phone doing?
Still going.
Okay, I have one story about. You want to go a little farther?
No, yeah. Wait, it just keeps like saying maximum recording. So, but
well,
yes,
my
it's working.
ancestors, when they came down here, they took and had really scratch anyway to make ends meet, you know, because like that one paper I showed you, they was making payments on the place, and it was like 1917 they bought it, but I think it was 1925 when they paid it off, and that's where the Simpsons took and this is the one right here, I believe it was. Anyway, took and okayed it. in 1926. They took and paid for the place. Well, anyway, they started raising every calf they could. They a lot of times farmers would have bull calves or whatever, and didn't really care if they kept them. But they had dairy here. They picked up stray calves, from different farmers like that, raised them up for meat. My cousin said a lot of those meat and stuff like that, they sold to the logging camps like Schaefer's up there and all, because Schaefer's a relative, and they bought meat and pork and everything else from them. They logged. They took, and also my grandfather up there on Spalding Road, back in there, he had my great grandfather had a still, and the family took and made alcohol there. And they'd bring it down in a wagon, put it in a big old barn here, which I had pictures of the original barn. He took and put it in there, and they had a connection up in Tacoma, where people come and they want alcohol, and they'd sell that alcohol to them. And they took and went back in there, pay them. Yeah, that's part of the barn.
So they were moonshiners.
They was moonshiners.
I heard that was that way all up and down the valley.
And it gets a little bit more interesting in that. You couldn't make moonshine and sell it in Grace Harbor County unless the sheriff come and checked it out. Because he didn't want anybody in his county selling rot gut and killing somebody. Because it would bring it down on everybody. So you paid the sheriff so much, he'd come out and he'd inspect your still and stuff like that and said, okay, you're doing it right. And he'd let you go on and do it. It was all undercover.
Do you know what the sheriff's name?
I do not know what sheriff was. That was the family history always done. The sheriff was watching out for you.
See, it just keeps stopping.
That's probably a lot of people don't talk about that.
That's awesome. So do you have anything else to add first? Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
And so anyway, they did that, a little bit of moonshine to help make ends meet. One other interesting thing was my family during the recession, they had a lot of people looking for work and not find work and stuff like that. Well, they was clearing some of this property off down here. Well, he would offer some of the guys, if they wanted to work there, $1 a day, working on the farm, and room and board. They had an old bunkhouse, and they got to stay in the bunkhouse, and they made sure they had a hot meal, and they made $1 a day anyway working there. And they said they had quite a few people coming through, for a short time, until they could get on their feet and get going someplace else.
Nice.
Is that a lot of money for back then?
Huh?
Yes.
Really?
It was a lot of money back then. It's
Yeah.
$1 a day.
So, what's the most important thing you've learned during your life? Make the white coffee.
Well, yeah. I truly believe in karma anyway. You treat somebody as you want to be treated, and it's going to come back to reward you, Just like, look at my grandfather did, that German gal, he rewarded her, and she'd come back, oh God, she was really grateful, and she remembered us, and I had other things too, even worked at the school, we dumpster dive sometimes. They'd throw things in the dumpster, oh, okay, God, that's a neat box, and I brought it home. I took and brought this toolbox home and set in I shouldn't say tool, it was a cabinet, metal cabinet. It was mounted on the wall and in the ag shop. And when they remodeled, they threw it out there in the scrap pile. So I asked the contractor, hey, can I have that box? And he said, oh, sure. He's just going to the junk, So I brought it home. I was going to hang it in my garage back there. And never did. Well, here, a few years later, quite a few years, they bought a piece of equipment. They needed a box to put it in. I said, aha, I got some. I went back and I hung it right on the wall, not too far from where it was at before. And they put their stuff in it.
That's funny. That's funny.
Repurpose.
I'm going to check Oh, it's getting hot even. How's yours doing?
It's about burnt the thing up, huh?
Yeah. I was talking.
I noticed you were taking a picture of the old car. Here's a better picture of it.
Thank you. Yes.
That's his uncle, the one we bought it from.
Yes, Uncle Fred. Huh?
Yeah, Uncle Fred.
I'll put it in front of the camera.
Yeah.
You guys still have it?
And
It's right there. You walk by it all the time.
Oh.
Yeah, it's full of junk.
But
I keep cleaning it out, but it
we
keeps.
did get it out that one year for the car show.
We did.
And I have
Yeah,
video.
we
I
we
have
towed
video.
it with the tractor.
I have video of Andy in your truck pulling you in it when you're leaving the car show.
Oh,
Yeah.
leaving though.
Well,
Yeah,
I
we
pulled
pulled it up there with the tractor.
And then I parked the tractor there, and we had people going around and standing by the tractor taking pictures.
Yeah, I can take them out.
Oh, that was
My-
fine. I think.
And then
My
here's
farm
this
tractor
one if you
Oh, yeah.
want a picture.
We
of
probably
that.
have
you think
that.
that girl
Yeah.
will ever run again?
Well, I
think
guess
that's the same one over there. I think.
are we about finished?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I
You
think
want
that
to
was
get out of
good.
here? Yeah, I better run.
I want to use your bathroom.
Yeah. Second that.
Is that one
All right.
in here, David? Was this
One
picture
thing
in
on
here?
this property down here on the deal, they bought the piece from the Simpsons anyway, and then a few other pieces they picked up later, like the Stoner Patch over here by the railroad tracks. They bought that later. They bought the old Hartshorn Place down there by the bridge down there, and they still got the piling, which I don't know if you've seen the book because I know a lot of it come from your museum deal.
Oh yeah, I haven't. I don't think I've looked.
Oh, you better look at that one. But they showed those piling down there. And I didn't realize that the Schaefer's was that big. How many mills they had their own ships. God, it was.
They did. You know what I just discovered about Weyerhaeuser, which I was sharing with Janie, which her husband worked there. Frederick Weyerhaeuser was richer than John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, really?
He started Weyerhaeuser in Washington in 1800, and that's what you go to their history, and that's what they say. But he started back in Rock Island, Illinois, and he was already rich. And he had he was involved in all these companies. There was like 16 or 18 different companies. And they said no one knew that he had a part in one of them. He was really quiet and didn't talk about all his business.
I'll be darned.
And he gave tons of money to people, donations. And his deal was, if you make it public that I'm donating, I'll withdraw my funds. And yeah, so I just found all these old newspapers. And then I found his house in St. Paul. That's where he came from when he came here. But his house just sold in March for $2 million. It was built in 1885. So it's just cool because I was at Weyerhaeuser Friday and talking to them, and nobody knows.
How much did Schaefer's get out of selling their holdings to Weyerhaeuser?
I don't know. That amount.
Well, they sold it to
Was it
Simpson
first?
because they didn't like Weyerhaeuser.
Oh, really?
And then Simpson turned around and sold it, had a deal with Weyerhaeuser to go ahead and sell it to,
Oh, really?
because Simpson was not as interested in as much property on this side, but Weyerhaeuser was.
Yeah, and I've seen in the book there's Simpsons and Schaefer got the first rice anyway to log up in the national forest up there.
Oh, I need this book. I don't have this
I
book.
don't
That's
know
what-
if you guys is interested. This is when the gym
That
was,
is an amazing book, though.
the gym was
I learned so
moved
much
from
from
the
that book
school.
and reading it.
Oh,
Yeah,
And they sold that up here at
David's
drugstore.
uncle.
Oh,
he's got a whole bunch of those books. That was the last copy he had of that one.
cool.
so I put on